Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us across the great Louisiana plain, where we are having so much fun advancing the cause of constitutional freedom in Louisiana, and slowly but surely, day by day, and on some days quite rapidly, draining the vast Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you so much for joining us today, for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so thankful for you. As I always say, and I mean it every time, you are the absolutely best listening family anyone could possibly hope for. And we are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, your friendship, your financial support. If you're looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd also really appreciate it if you'd help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, share it. You can share short clips from YouTube and Rumble instead of sharing the whole episode, and links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. We are so honored to be affiliate partners for General Michael Flynn's movie, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. The DVD can be purchased from several popular retailers, and he's on tour screening and promoting the film. If you'd like to support General Flynn and the State of Freedom, visit freedomstate.us to get your copy of the DVD, to buy Flynn movie merchandise, or purchase tickets to a live screening. Our affiliate link is also in the show notes. Today we have joining us someone who I'm just so thrilled for us to be speaking with. He's a constitutional conservative and a common sense legislator, which is a breath of fresh air. Representative Brett Geymann from Louisiana's 35th District will be joining us today. Before we talk to Representative Geymann, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Psalm chapter 28, verses 7 through 9, and it says, "The Lord is my strength and my wraparound shield. When I fully trust in you, help is on the way. I jump for joy and burst with ecstatic, passionate praise. I will sing songs of what you mean to me. You will be the inner strength of all your people, the mighty protector of all, and the saving strength for all your anointed ones. Save your people whom you love and bless your chosen ones. Be our shepherd, leading us forward, forever carrying us in your arms." And we often here look to King David for wisdom, specifically wisdom in war, because he was the great warrior king of Israel. And as I often point out, in times of great distress, he would recall the faithfulness of God, and those personal testimonies of his would strengthen him and change his mindset to that of being loved, protected, and cared for, and mighty in battle, rather than scared and afraid and surrounded on all sides. And that's exactly what he's doing here in the scripture. And that's what we need to do. Here we are, right at the midway point in the regular session, after two special sessions, looking in the face of a possible convention to amend the Constitution. And for those of us who are in this fight and those who are in other battles, we're facing similar weariness. But this is the time to remind ourselves of where our strength, our hope, and our victory come from. They come from the Lord. He is our wraparound shield. He is our mighty protector and inner strength. He's the one who saves us, and he's the one who's giving us every victory that is being won. So set your gaze, your heart, and your focus back on the Lord. Spend time praising him and watch how he renews your strength. He's so faithful to do that. Our praise of him is what infuses us with joy and with the strength to continue to push ahead.
One of the great saints, Danielle, said, you have an awful lot going on today. You have a lot on your agenda, so you better pray for an hour instead of 15 minutes. In other words, the more we have going on, the more time we should spend in prayer so God can give us the strength to do what we need to do every day, And so, and speaking of someone who was down there in the fight, who actually is one of the 19 representatives who stood up against the busting of the spending cap last year, we did a profiles in courage, and the Representative Brett Geymann was among the 19 featured in our profiles of courage for standing up against the busting of the spending cap last year. It's such a pleasure to have him here, a real fiscal conservative. Good morning, Brett. How are you, sir? Thank you for taking a few minutes to be with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, and what a great message that you guys just presented. And I would, the one thing that one of you just said at the end was, the fact that you get so busy and you get so much going on. And I always like to say it's like we're drinking out of a fire hose sometime, and you just, you have to multitask, and you get up earlier in the morning and you stay up later at night. You still can't catch up. I think everybody out there can relate to that in real life, right? That's the life we live. That's the life I live. I have a small business at home, and I have two small businesses at home. Of course, like most people, we have a family, and there's just things always going on. But you said, it just means we need to spend even more time praying and preparing. And, the challenge, and I know you didn't call me in onto the show to talk about this, but the challenge for me is, where do you find that time? And I've had to, just my little personal story, I've had to kind of adapt to a schedule that is fluid. And I find myself, this session right now, I actually started something else new. When I get in an elevator, and if I'm by myself, and I don't mean by myself like no one else in the elevator, but I'm not going up the elevator with a guest, where I'm having a conversation. If I'm getting in the elevator and I'm riding up to the 10th floor or whatever, what do I have, 30 seconds to a minute? I pray for somebody in that elevator while I'm going up. Say, hey, somebody's on my mind. I'll pray for the Speaker of the House. I'm going to pray for the governor. I'm going to pray for my family. Hey, that's 1 minute that I can capture in that day that I can spend praying. And when I walk into a meeting, I used to teach an adult Sunday school class, and we talked about this years ago. So I walk into a meeting, take 30 seconds when you're walking in the door and just ask the Lord to speak through you, to guard your words, to help you recall. If you're going into a committee meeting like I'm going to be doing today, and you're going to be discussing an issue, say, Lord, just give me that wisdom and give me that recall to remember, something that I heard to help me debate and discuss this issue. Hey, 30 seconds. And so, look, that's just a tip I'm throwing out there for anybody. I'm not saying that's the right way to do things, but it works for me. And, you have to capture that minute, that second, that downtime to just continually, we're supposed to continuously pray. Well, what does that really mean? And so for me, this is just what works for me. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but hey, jumping in your car and you're driving to the Capitol. I'm doing a 30-minute David Jeremiah podcast. I'm doing some prayer time. I'm putting on some worship music. And look, in the middle of all that, I'm getting a phone call, like from you. Like, so, I have to turn my worship.
Exactly.
I have to turn my worship music off to answer your call. But anyway, that's just how you have to roll. And I think when we all get so caught up in life, my only thought and my only encouragement to anybody is just, find a way to try to continuously pray throughout the day, even if it's little short prayers, because it just really keeps us focused. And it's hard to do. I'll raise my hand and be the first one to say it's hard to find that quiet time. It's hard to find that prayer time. And, you can get up earlier, and guess what? You'll fill that hour with something else too. So it's just a constant challenge. And I thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, Brett, I got to ask you along these lines, because that's so powerful, your daily practice of prayer, because you're right. It is so easy to get distracted. It's like the devil is always trying to get in there, always trying to distract us. Even when we're doing good things, if we're not doing them with the proper motive, then we have to check that also. But I have to ask you this, Brett. Last year, and again, this is not really one of the topics but I have to ask this: what was it that gave you the courage last year on that debacle on the House floor when y'all had no time to review any Senate amendments on the spending bills, and there was this vote to bust the spending cap so money could be spent on all manner of things that really don't go to critical infrastructure in the state? And instead of paying down debt, retirement debt, and that sort of thing, a lot of money seems to have been squandered. But you were one of the 19 who stood up against that. What was going through your head at that moment, and what was it that gave you the courage to stand fast when other people all around you looked like they were folding?
Well, that's a great question, and we probably need a few hours to answer that. I'll do my best to do that in a few minutes. But a little history about me. It's my second tour of duty in the Capitol as a state rep, and we have term limits, as 12 years. I served 12 years, served a complete term, went home, and the Lord provided an opportunity for me to come back, which, believe me, that was not planned. But I'm grateful to be here. And in my last life over there, I was an appropriations member. I'm a finance major back in the day from college. And so, just the numbers game kind of comes to me naturally. It's my wheelhouse. And I began to work in my last time there on learning the budget process and learning, how the things flow through the Capitol and how government takes in money and spends money. And look, that's a challenge. And you ask anybody who's on the budget committees, and you're learning something every day, and you still don't know anything. It's a really, really, really big challenge. But being grounded in that and having lots of knowledge, I got into fiscal battles with my former governor, Bobby Jindal, that I served under. And, he and I sparred a lot over fiscal matters. And so I kind of had that background. So coming into this new time serving in the legislature, I'm back on the budget committee again. It's kind of old hat for me. So, I kind of had that reputation anyway. And I think because of that reputation that I walked in the building with, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way at all, but that I had that reputation and people didn't know me, but they knew that about me. When I spoke on the issue, I think people respected my view on that. So it started out, we had the conservative caucus members. We had a group of, I think, about 42 members of the, quote, conservative caucus. And one of the things that platform of being in that caucus was we would be fiscally responsible. So when this issue came up about busting the cap, I was one of the first people to speak out on that. Most didn't even realize what it was. They had never seen that before, had never dealt with it before. Well, guess what? Under Kathleen Blanco and Bobby Jindal, I dealt with it 3 times. So I had already had that experience of how that spending cap worked, what the intentions of it were, why we should and shouldn't bust a cap. And so I brought that knowledge to my friends and my colleagues, and I suggested very strongly that we do not need to bust the cap. We do not need to raise the expenditure limit. And here's all the reasons why. And we had a good number of people who agreed with that. In fact, we wore a pin on our lapel that said 36. And we were called the 36. 36 people 36 people vote no. And so we had more than 36. Well, as the things typically go toward the end, the pressure gets heavy, key people begin to bail out. And some of my very dear friends and very strong fiscal conservatives, ended up giving in and deciding to not make that tough vote. And so to answer your question about the courage that comes with that or what helps me do that, I think mainly for me, it was just the history that I had, the experience that I had, the knowledge that I had on the issue. I really, and again, don't mean this arrogantly, I don't think anyone in the building could out debate me on a budget issue, especially that one. And so I think people respected that. And I hope and think that I gave courage to others. When you have someone else you can lean on and someone else that's on that island with you, I think that's what hopefully helped the 19 hold together. I wish we could have certainly held 36, but we didn't. And look, a lot of good comes out of that. You build stronger relationships with those 19 people. You build relationships with the original 36. I mean, you go through those tough votes, and I think it helps you be a better legislator moving forward. We were certainly disappointed we couldn't hold the line, but I think it makes us stronger. The 19, the ones of us who returned, and I don't know what that number is. I want to say it's 12 of the 19 are still with us in the new legislative body. Look, we're that much stronger, and we're that much more determined to make sure we remain fiscally responsible moving forward. And real quick, the reason we didn't want to bust the cap is because we know that the next governor coming in is likely to be a Republican, and we're likely to have budget shortfall. And we don't want that administration to have to deal with that. We were looking forward, and I said, hey, it happened to Bobby Jindal. Kathleen Blanco spent every dime, her administration spent every dime that she could, and grew government faster than we could sustain it. And Bobby Jindal had to try to deal with that nonsense. And now he didn't necessarily do a good job dealing with it, but still it was kind of put on his plate that we could have prevented some of that. And so I brought that story to my colleagues and said, we do not want to do this to the next governor. We do not want to do this to the next Republican administration. And but we did, and here we are.
Yeah, Brett, if you could go in if you could go in there right now and sit down right now, and let's just say you had your way. Let's just say you were king for a day. You went in there this morning, and you could write down exactly what you would do fiscally in the state of Louisiana to make sure that we are a fiscally responsible state, that we're not squandering money, that we are using money, taxpayer money, wisely and judiciously, cutting where we can. What would you do if you could make the decision right now?
Yeah, I think actually, believe it or not, there's a real simple answer to that very complex question. And it is, you can only spend what you can sustain. Okay, so you have to determine what is the sustainable amount of growth that our state can handle and sustain based on history. Because the thing about numbers, the thing about the stock market, the thing about a business, the thing about sales, the thing about anything that you do dealing with numbers, the first thing you do is what? You look at the history. What happened in the past? You're going to draft the football player, the basketball player, the whatever, in the NBA and WNBA and whatever draft. What do you look at? You look at stats, you look at numbers, you look at history, and you make the best determination you can based on the past history. And what you do, in my opinion, the one thing you could do is you go back and you say, what does history tell us that we can sustain? And that number would be, based on every analysis I've run with the smartest people in the building over all these years that I've been here, is it's somewhere around 2.5% to 3% that you can sustain in growth on average over time. Well, we did 8.5% growth last year, right? So that the first thing and the one thing that you could do to just really put us on the right path forward is to say we're not going to grow government faster than we can sustain it, and you just do that, and then you can have the micro debate on how do you spend the available money. But the real thing is that really doesn't matter as much as how much you spend. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we can fight over whether we should spend it on universities or spend it on K-12 or spend it on roads or spend it on drainage or spend it on whatever. Okay.
But it needs to be inside of the
it
box.
needs to be there you go. It needs to be inside of that box. And so I always, we get caught up in those micro debates about where we should spend it. The debate ought to be, how much should we spend?
What is it?
That's right. And so one thing that I think that the new group that I served with last term, I was there for 3 years, and of course we're on the first year of a second term now, is what the first question you should ask on budget day is? And I call budget day the day we present the budget on the floor. The first thing you ought to ask, you ought to punch a button and go to the mic and say, what's the growth? How much do we grow? That ought to be the question. And I think we have framed that, and I think that those questions are now being asked, where before nobody thought about saying, well, how much did we grow? Who cares? But I think because the 19 did what they did, that now will become standard procedure for us to say, yeah, how much did the budget grow this year? And so I think that's a huge
awesome.
step forward.
Absolutely.
And Rep. Geymann, is there any opportunity to get that, your wish here in order before we enter the next fiscal session?
Well, I have legislation that actually was drafted and going to be presented in committee this year about the bill was called the sustainability limit, the SL. I don't know, it had some acronyms with it or whatever, but it was basically a sustainability limit is what we named it. And and look, I say this carefully, but we were asked to pause and tap the brakes on that. A new administration's coming in. They're trying to make changes. They're drinking out of a fire hose, and we have to give them a chance to get their feet on the ground. And this is a really big step. And so, and then knowing that they wanted to do a constitutional convention, and we're not sure what fiscal changes, could and would be made in that. We decided, I ultimately as the author of the bill, but in consulting with other friends of mine and colleagues of mine, that let's tap the brakes for 1 year. Let's let the administration get settled in and see what direction they're going. And then we will come back next session in March, April of next year and present the sustainability limit legislation.
Are there any provisions that you would like to see inserted into or codified in the Constitution if we do have a convention to amend the Constitution?
Oh, there are tons. Okay, there are more than you and I could probably speak on in a day. But my understanding is the direction the administration wants to go with the Constitutional Convention is not to change and add and fix the Constitution, but to remove things that shouldn't be in there. So I don't think we're going to actually be going into a convention and saying, well, instead of doing this, we need to do that. Okay, which that would be a fascinating opportunity for all of us to be a part of, but I think it would take a lot of time. I think the direction the administration wants to go, as I understand it, is we want to go into a constitutional convention and start taking things out of it that shouldn't be there and putting them in statute. And what that would mean for all of us is legislative bodies could change those laws with a simple majority in a legislative session. Instead of having to get a 2/3 vote in a legislative session and then go onto a ballot and get a majority of the citizens of the state to agree as well, which is a much higher threshold, but harder to get to, harder to do, and not as quick. So I think that's the direction the administration wants to go. And so I don't know that we'll be, quote, changing the Constitution or as in terms of trying to fix things that we think need to be fixed. I think we're going to be removing those things out and putting them in a place where it's much easier to change just through a legislative body, simple majority vote.
Whittling it down. Yeah, I have a ton of respect for that because there's been a lot of discussions and a lot of I think a lot of people hold the opinion that the Louisiana state constitution is far too thick and cumbersome. And so this would hopefully free it up to be kind of the agile, straightforward document it was intended to be.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an argument. And I think there's arguments. There's valid arguments on both sides of any issue dealing with the Constitution and the size of it and the scope of it. The people chose to put all those things in there. You can argue they didn't know what they were voting on, but I mean, ultimately the people said, "Hey, I want to protect K-12 education because I don't trust a legislative body to do it. So I want to lock it up in the Constitution." Or I want to make sure the legislature doesn't spend money that's not recurring on items that are recurring, meaning that, spending one-time dollars on expenses that are continuous. And so they put that in the Constitution. Well, truthfully, all of us should be not doing that without even we shouldn't have to go to the Constitution to make that decision. We ought to make that decision on the front side. You can't spend money you don't have coming in, on a truck. I can't go buy a truck and have a note every month when I got a Christmas bonus and I'm not going to give again. And, but yet we put it in the Constitution, because we don't trust the legislature to do it right. And so there's an argument of...
Yeah, and honestly, the mistrust of the legislature as a general rule historically is well-earned and well-deserved. Fortunately, that's changing, but...
Yeah, no question about it. And look, we're looking now through a lens of, look, if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, if you're a libertarian, if you're a liberty-minded person, whatever political category you fall in, you sort of feel like right now we probably have a pretty good group at the Capitol. At least we think we do. We got a governor who, we think is conservative. We got a legislative body who we think is conservative. I mean, I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna let those guys handle that. But hey, 2 years ago we didn't have that, and 12 years ago we didn't have that, and we don't know where we're going to have 8 years ahead of us. So you have to be careful, I think, in my opinion, that we don't make our decision looking through the lens of, well, we trust these guys that are there right now. Well, what about 10 years from now? We don't know who the governor is going to be. We don't know who the legislative body is going to be. And I mean, I'm just making the case that the Constitution is the reason and the one instrument that we as citizens can say, hey, we want you to not do this, and I don't care who you are. And that's, so I don't know, there's just great, I think it's a fascinating exercise of freedom for us to even be able to talk about these things. But I think we ought to be talking
Absolutely.
about them. We ought to be talking about them, and we ought to be debating them, and we ought to be listening to the different ideas. And so we'll see where the Constitutional Convention goes and whether we even have one.
Yep. And all the more reason for citizens to remain vigilant. We have to stay aware of what our legislators are doing, and we have to stay active whenever it comes to election time, because that, if we whittle down the Constitution and some of those protections that were previously in there are not in there, then we have to make sure we're getting the right kind of people to represent us.
You are absolutely spot on. Couldn't agree with you more. And interestingly enough, and I'm in my 16th year of service, and I find that there is less attention paid today than there was when I first got in, which alarms me very much. Now, I could raise my hand and go, well, the reason I don't have a lot of people calling me is because they know me and they trust me and they just, hey, Brett's got it, don't worry about it. That may be true, but I kind of feel like it's just the citizens have just become,
Yeah, but let me say this, Brett. I think that is true because I can tell you, Danielle and I's organization, LACAG, and also the State of Freedom. Believe me, there are a lot of representatives who are getting a lot of calls and a lot of emails on a lot of bills from us. But you're exactly right. Conservatives have confidence in you because you've earned that confidence. We don't have to really bird dog you as a general rule to get you to do the right thing. Unfortunately, and that doesn't necessarily describe all of the legislators down there just yet. But we are, I think Danielle would agree with me, we're getting a lot of calls to action out, but we kind of focus on the legislators who we think may be questionable, and we try to put healthy pressure on those to do the right thing.
Well, and groups like you guys are really, really, really key and really, really, really important, because I will tell you that I hear your name mentioned often in the legislative conversations that we have among ourselves, and the relationships that we build and our circles of friendships, and it's important to have groups like you. And there's several other very good groups out there that we have tons of respect for, and we always want to make sure we're aligned with those groups. And if we're not, we go, wait a minute, why are we on opposite sides of this issue? And that is very important. And so I didn't mean to suggest that the groups like yours are not active, but individual citizen activity, in my opinion, has gone way down. And I don't know if it's the times, the change, the younger generation doesn't care about politics. I don't really know what it is, but I just feel like that citizens are not as active as they have been in the past. And I really hate to say this, but I think a lot of people have just given up. They've just given up on government in general, which is not what we need to be doing. We need to be vigilant in our fight right now to try to take things back. We certainly don't want to be giving them up.
Yeah, and I believe that. And I've heard from several people that, they feel like before organizations like ours came onto the scene, there was just a vacuum. And I think, so I take your point well, that without some kind of organizing, coalescing force and voice, I'm not sure how many people were just going to go up to the Capitol by themselves and be knocking on your door.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, people, I know people understand this. I don't mean to disrespect by saying this, but I want people to understand fully that when you get into this building, you are surrounded by people who are paid, okay, to influence you. All right. And they're paid by a group that has an interest of some kind. So therefore we call them interest groups. And then we call those people lobbyists. And it's not that they're bad people, but they're doing their job. And so when you walk down the hall, do you know who's talking to us? Lobbyists. Now we have ones that we respect, and we respect, if a certain lobbyist comes to you and says, hey, Brett, I want to tell you about this issue, and I need you to be with me if you can, and here's why, and da-da-da, and they have earned your respect, that's valuable. But my point is this. They're being paid to influence you. And it may not be in consideration of what the citizens at home really want. And so, the citizens at home have to have a voice because they're at work, right? They're at work. They're doing life. They're at the soccer game. They're taking care of the kids. They're doing the grandkids, whatever. And they need groups like yours to be their, quote, lobbyists and their voice. And so that's why, Family Forum, you guys, and other groups that are similar, in on the political spectrum to you all, are the groups that we kind of listen. Hey, what are they saying? What is this group saying, and what are they thinking? And it helps us, stay in the right lane. So again, thank you for what you do, and to all the groups that are doing that. Even if there are times where we don't 100% agree and see an issue the same way, it's still very valuable to have that input.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to us and to hear our side of the story, because we know that you don't have to. So we really do appreciate that you have taken the time and you do consult with us. I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. So, Representative Geymann, you were one of the few Republicans who voted against the so-called school choice or education savings account bill that was brought by Representative Julie Emerson. And because we had spoken before on this, I know you did it on philosophical grounds. Would you talk about your perspective on this bill and why it kind of goes against the grain of conservative principles?
Well, we probably need about 3 hours to do a really in-depth conversation.
Well, we need the Cliff's Notes. We need the Cliff's Notes.
Let me say a few things. One, Julie Emerson is a rock star. She's a dear friend. She's a strong conservative, and I'm not going to say she's wrong on this issue. Okay, so I want to clear that. The second thing is I was only one of very few Republicans to vote no. It doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. And it doesn't mean that their vote is wrong. Okay, I just want to clear all of that. I'm not in any way being critical of any of my dear friends at the Capitol who voted the other way on this issue, because this is a very, very tough issue. And I think there's an easy, to be also, to just for the record, last year I voted for an ESA bill for the first time in my career as a legislator. Okay, I voted for it. And what I told my folks at home that I consult with on those issues is, you know what, I've given up on public education, and I just think right now we have to try everything. And that was my reason. And I think that's the reason that a lot of my friends and colleagues voted yes on ESAs in this session. Is like, conceptually, I think the idea has merit. You know, what's wrong with your tax dollars following your child, and you can spend them wherever school, wherever you think is best for your child. And, you know, there's just some great, great arguments for it. My problem is I have battle scars from previous battles in education years ago over Common Core, over, I call it, I'm going to say this and it probably won't come out right, but a corporatist takeover of education. And you go, what the heck is that? You know, and I thought we were pro-business. Of course we're pro-business. But I would make this argument that big business is not conservative. Big business does not care about family values. Big business has no morals at all, in my opinion. Now, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that, but it's just what I believe.
Not here.
It's true,
well, and they
not on this show.
And they, you know, the big businesses across the country have inserted themselves into education. Bill Gates, that crazy liberal up in New York, I can't think of his name, that spent all the money on Common Core. But anyway, you look at who's behind it, and your antenna begin to come up. Okay, so then, you know, a decade ago, 15 years ago, I got caught up in the battle to fight Common Core, keep it out of our schools. And again, it looks great on paper. Hey, we want rigorous standards. We want to improve education. We want all 50 states to rise to the top. I mean, these are great bullet points, but what do they really mean? And my argument against Common Core was it was a national agenda. It was driven from national Bill Gates type big business people. And I always suspected there was an agenda behind it. When you start looking behind the curtain, you follow the path of what Common Core would do. And I said, you know, we're going to open ourselves up to things being inserted into our curriculum, culture coming into our state that we do not agree with. Here we go, CRT, DEI, SEL, you know, all these things that have come into our educational system since Common Core all came because we opened up that door. We have standards. We have state standards that are all the same, quote, all the same. And I think I told one of you this when we talked briefly before. I think states ought to be laboratories of innovation. I think we ought to be going, whoa, what is Arkansas doing? Hey, I want to take that idea and make it better. And well, what is Florida doing? And because we do that with everything else. Why aren't we doing that with education? Well, because we have
So
All of
well
these
said.
people, yeah, all of these people, experts are saying, oh, no, we need to have one curriculum and one set of standards and everything, da, 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 da. And then we're going to have to take a test. We're going to take a test to measure how good our teachers are, and a test to measure whether your college material, a test to measure whether your school is performing, a test to measure whether your state is performing. Well, guess what? To pass those tests, guess what you have to teach? That agenda. Okay? And that is the problem. That is the problem. But here comes the problem with the essays, in my opinion, potential problems, because I don't disagree with parent choice on where the child should go to school. Who knows better than the parents? Who knows what's better for that student than the parent? So I 100% buy off on that. The problem is, pull the curtain and see who's behind it. And it's the same faces that I fought a decade ago. Same faces. And so I just had this gut check, this pause, this, you know what, I just can't go along with this, because I'm afraid that this will lead to the intrusion into private schools and home schools, that we will have to comply with state requirements, and just a slippery slope with the same people pushing it that gave us all this nonsense a decade ago. Did they all just change, or is it really more of the same? And so look, for me personally, it was just a gut check. I have no criticism of any of my colleagues that voted for it. They are respecting, for the most part, my decision to vote no. And I'm fine with all of that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of where I'm at.
You did. And I just maybe a question slash, I don't know, maybe a point on that is, I guess one of the issues I have with it, and I'm not sure if this is still in the bill, but it doesn't seem to treat all income levels the same, that not all parents are going to be able to have their tax dollars follow them. And it's based on lower income rather than higher income. So ostensibly the people who pay the highest amount of taxes will have the least choice for what to do with their children, especially if you fall in that, upper mid range where maybe you're working a lot, but you still can't afford to send your kids to private school. But now you're sending somebody else's kids to private school.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. I think, and I wasn't really involved in the bill, obviously, because I really wasn't for it. But I suspect that, you have to make changes in order to get support. And I assume that part of the discussions and compromises that were made as this was drafted and crafted would be that, we can probably get more buy-in if we give more toward the lower income. But your point is absolutely spot on. If we're really for school choice, if we're really for parental decisions and parental rights, what difference does it make on your income level? I mean, if you really, what is it they said? It shouldn't matter what zip code you live in. Then it shouldn't matter what zip code you live in. That ought to be it.
Exactly.
You ought to just get the dollars, and they ought
Exactly.
to follow your child wherever you want to send them, and it ought to be over. Okay, so, and maybe that's where we're trying to get.
Yeah, especially right along what Danielle said, especially when the people who seem to be excluded from the program are the people who are paying the most taxes and paying to send other people's kids to a private school. It just seems fundamentally unfair. My sister's one, Brett, who works very, very hard, makes a good living, but worked as a single mother, worked very, very hard for many years to send her kid through private school. She could have used that money, but under the law, this bill, she would be excluded from the program. It just seems unfair.
Yeah, and look, there are little pieces, in that whole package of bills that those little issues are there. I would just say this, that I can't deny that there's probably going to be some great things come out of this. That there's going to be some child that's going to get to go to a Christian private school down the road that probably couldn't have any other way. So I am not at all going to suggest that there won't be some good come out of this. I think one of the reasons Family Forum was strongly for it was because they feel like, hey, we might be able to get one more child have an opportunity to come and participate in a Christian private school and hear the gospel. I mean, and look, I can't deny that. I can't deny that at all. I think that that's a great thing that we can hope comes out of that. But again, I think I've condensed and compressed the reason why I couldn't vote for it. And I will be the first 10 years from now to go, you know what, hey, it worked out great, and I'm glad it worked out. But I could also be the guy who puts the T-shirt on again and says, I told you so. I don't know which one it'll be, but, and it doesn't matter. It's just, it's we're here. And, at this point, I want to do my part to try to continue to make it better. And if we need to make changes over the next few years, I'll try to be a part of that. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to dwell on it any longer, really. But that's my story on that.
Yeah. And I share, Brett, you and Danielle and I absolutely, because we've talked about it on the show, share your sympathy for kids who are locked into failing private schools across the state. And I don't mean to paint with too broad a brush, because there's some very good public schools and some good public school districts.
Absolutely.
But a lot of them are failing, and a lot of them are irreversibly lost. And this bill, a lot of people interpret this bill as basically saying, okay, we have given up on the public school system in Louisiana. Let's save as many kids as we can. And this is one way to do it.
And that's a great argument. And I don't know that I disagree with that. To be honest with you, I don't know that I disagree with that. And then, look, by the way, just background, my family are teachers. I'm not. But my daughter is, and both of my sisters are, one of my brother-in-laws are. And, it's just a lot of my family members teach in public school currently today, right now. And fortunately for me, we live in a good school district, and my family members teach in good schools for the most part. I have one sister that teaches in Colorado now, and then that school, maybe not so good. Colorado's really lost, but the point
yes,
of that is, and I told my friends in education, and I have many, many dear friends in education, very strong, great family people, strong Christians. I mean, we're blessed to have them in that environment. We really are. And I've told them, I said, look, I will tell you right now, I think in 10 years public education, we will not recognize it. Because there are some great school districts around our state, but they're few. They're getting fewer by the day. And the more of this garbage that we have to insert into our curriculum, and this nonsense that we have to teach, and we're going to continue to crumble. And so even those really good schools, by no fault of their own, are at some point, I think moms and dads are going to go, you know what, I'm taking my kids out of public school, and I'm going to go put them in a homeschool co-op.
Once woke corporations and the federal government get their nose and their money inside the tent, don't think for 1 second that they're not going to try to control policy and curriculum. And that is the big concern that we have, Brett, and you expressed it very well earlier. I know you have to go in a minute, but do you have a minute to talk to us about carbon capture and eminent domain?
Yeah, I literally have like 6 minutes after walking the building for a 9 o'clock committee presentation. So I have time to talk a little bit longer. What do you want to hear?
Yeah. Well, let me a question about the carbon capture and the eminent domain. A big concern that our members have really from across the state is the idea that in Louisiana law now, as a matter of public policy, carbon capture sequestration has been declared a public good in Louisiana, and private corporations now have the authority to expropriate private property for carbon capture sequestration. And regardless of how you feel about that, eminent domain, it seems to us to be a gross misuse of the constitutional takings clause and eminent domain provision in the Constitution. So the question is, are you concerned about the misuse of eminent domain for carbon capture sequestration?
Yes, 100%. And so I have been blessed, if that's the right word, with being named chairman of Natural Resources Committee on the House side, which those subject matters come through that committee. So that's what is put on my plate. And I went to work with others on the committee and industry representatives to develop and create and craft and draft a package of bills that will deal with how do we manage this new industry that's coming to our state. Whether you like carbon capture or not, for the record, I don't. I think it's silly. And most people that I serve with agree. But regardless, it's here. The government is incentivizing corporations and industry to do it. So how do we best manage it? And as we begin to negotiate that package and draft that package, my one sticking point to industry was I want expropriation off the table. And they said, oh, well, there's just no way. There's just no way we can take that off the table. And I said, no, go back to work. I'll see you tomorrow. We'd come back and we met literally daily for hours on end with industry leaders, a working group of landowners and oil and gas people and some of my colleagues on the committee. And the message every day was, I want it off the table. And we finally got there. And it was a lot of hard work. We had to build trust among that group. We had to be able to listen and to learn and to hear each other's concerns. And we learned from industry that, hey, there are times where we just have to have it. And I'll give you this example. You're developing a project. They use it in the oil and gas industry called unitization, but I'll get to that in a second. But in the oil and gas industry or in some sort of project, and you get a lease and you have, let's just say you have 100 people on that lease and 98 of them sign up. Oh yeah, I want to do this because I'm gonna make some money on my property. They're gonna drill for oil. They're gonna pump carbon in the ground and store it and whatever. And two people can't be reached. It's a big tract of land. They got a bunch of heirs, and you have to have some means by which you can resolve that. So I learned there's a time and a place for it. They tried the argument of, hey, it's a public good. I said, nope, that's out. There's no way you're going to tell me that industry, making money on a project is in the public good. It's not, I'm just not buying that. At the end of the day, the package now removes expropriation and eminent domain from carbon sequestration storage. It's now off the table, assuming this package of bills passes. We were able to get that done. Now, with that said, the Department of Energy, state Louisiana Department of Energy, can develop what's called a unit, in which case you could be an involuntary member of that unit. And what that would mean, and what we wrote into the bill, is 75% of the people that the department deems inside the unit would have to voluntarily sign up, minimum of 75%. The other 25% could be involuntarily forced into that pool. So in a way, it's not eminent domain because you have to go through all this process, and the department has to deem that, hey, you're part of this unit, and here's why. You have to have public hearings. Just a whole lot of things have to happen. And then the department determines, the Commissioner of Energy, of Conservation, determines the value of that land and how much you were to be compensated. And of course, you have the right to go to court, and jury trial, and all kinds of things. So it's a much better process than, quote, expropriation, where, say, a big industry comes and knocks on your door and says, hey, Chris, hey, Danielle, I'm not taking your property. I want you to sign a lease for me to do carbon sequestration underneath your backyard. And you go, I do not want that anywhere near me. And they go, well, I understand that. They pat you on the back and go, by the way, if you don't do it, we'll just take it. We'll just take it from you.
Exactly.
We'll take expropriation and we'll take it from you. And by the way, we have so much money in the bank, you'll never be able to beat me. And they beat you over the head with that. And so they force you into doing it because you're scared. Otherwise, they're just going to come and take your property. And so I think we have a win on that. I think we had a big win on that. And I'm hoping that we can get that all the way through the process. It's now in the Senate, so it's out of the House. So we're halfway there. Yeah.
Well, we're going to help. We're going to help get it. We're going to help you get it through, Brett. And 75% of the affected landowners in a unit would have to agree. And if they don't get the 75%, they can't move forward. Is that basically what we're saying?
That is correct. Correct.
And Rep. Geymann, let's say you were one of the 25%, you got forced into this situation, you're not happy about it, but you're living with it, you've been compensated for your land. Let's say it's a pipeline and it's just under your property, so you still have your house on the property. The pipeline blows up or something, and is there any provision for liability to the company if something goes wrong on that expropriated property?
Question.
Yes. No, it's a great question, and we've dealt with that. We have made sure that there are safety provisions. We made sure that there is that the operator of that facility would be liable for damages, and we have definitely taken care of that.
Awesome.
Absolutely, 100%.
Is there a cap on it, Brett? Is there a cap?
Yeah, there's a cap right now on there. Actually, we had that in committee yesterday. Yeah, I think it's the non-economic cap, and we actually raised it yesterday in committee. That's a different bill, but we are telling industry that, hey, these numbers are not accurate, are not in line, and we need to make sure that people are very well protected in case something does happen. And by the way,
there was discussion yesterday.
Yeah. for them to get a quote class 6 permit to have a carbon capture project, they have to have a tremendous amount of money in a I'll call it a trust fund. That's not what it is, but they have to have a tremendous amount of money and a whole lot of insurance in case these kind of things happen. So there's pretty good protections in there. I feel pretty comfortable with it.
Hopefully there'll be a very, very generous, if there is a cap, that it's very, very generous, because when accidents like this do happen, families certainly deserve to be compensated and made whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it.
Absolutely. Rep. Geymann, you have been so generous with your time. Thank you for spending some time with us this morning. What is the best way for our listeners to follow you on social media, or how can they contact your office if they want to talk to you about this issue or any number of issues that may be coming across your desk?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do, I'm not doing a whole lot of social media on the political side at this current time. I do have a personal page, but I don't do politics on it. But and the same with Twitter. I have a page, but I'm not really active on it on the political side. It's just gotten so nasty out there. Kind of stay away from that. The easiest thing to do to reach me is you can click on the Louisiana Legislature page, and you can go to my district and email me, and my legislative assistant contacts me as soon as that email comes through, and I either call you, or she'll give you my number, or we'll text you, or we'll do whatever. We will definitely link up.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Let me come on again one day.
We want you to.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful day.
You too. Have a blessed day.
Take care.
Chris, I love talking to Rep. Geymann. I really love the fact that he can see both sides of these issues. It means that he's thought them through. He's not defensive about his position. He's not mad at anybody who took a different took the different vote, because he gets where they're coming from. And that means that he's put a lot of thought and a lot of conversation and consultation into the decisions he's ultimately made. And I just have so much respect for that.
Me too. And he looks like someone, Danielle, who is just wants to get the best product that we could get. And recognizes that, you don't always get everything you want when you want it, but you try to fashion something that achieves the best result that can possibly be achieved under the circumstances. And it looks like that's what he's willing to do. And he seems very broadly respected by both sides on the aisle, and yet he will stand on principle, like he did on busting the spending cap. And so I think we're very, very lucky to have him there, and I'm so glad to hear that the pure eminent domain, where they can come in and basically take your property if they want to, is no longer going to be the law in Louisiana because of his hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, he took the time. He sat down with industry to understand the issues, even though it's something he doesn't agree with. He listened, he took in feedback, and he, at the end of the day, you have to work with what you've got, and we've said this multiple times, but if the EPA is crushing the oil and gas industry here, the pipeline industry specifically, and this is the route they have and are being financially incentivized by the federal government with our taxpayer dollars to do, then let's work with what we've got. Let's work within the confines of the system that we have, so we don't ultimately crush and run out good workers and skilled workers, very innovative workers. Let's work with what we've got until we can, as citizens who let our legislators know where we stand on these issues, and until basically, President Trump is back in office. That's all I guess I can really say about curtailing the EPA. It's going to take President Trump and SCOTUS, right, to get that thing turned around. I don't see the legislature doing much, the federal legislature doing much to help us out on that.
No, I don't either. That's exactly right. We need Trump and a good SCOTUS, and we can get that done. No question about it. I wanted to also mention, Danielle, that, Brett's view on the education savings accounts really parallel ours 100%. The reservations that we have about it, both in terms of the degree to which big corporations and the federal government would inject themselves into private school education if this goes through, and really, as you pointed out, because of the discriminatory nature of the money that's being given out for it. Why should not all taxpaying citizens? Well, to be honest with you, many of the people who are getting it won't pay taxes at all, right?
Yep. Exactly. And you can see this. I mean, that bill is setting dual income families up for making a choice. Like, well, we could either have one income and send our kid to private school, or we could have two incomes and not be able to. And that's just wrong. That's straight up wrong.
It is 100%. And we're going to continue to express our reservations. And if it looks like the bill is going to go through, we're going to certainly put some strong pressure on the Senate side to make some real amendments here along the lines of what we're talking about. Katie had suggested there should be some provision in the bill that absolutely makes it clear that by accepting federal money into the private school system, the state of Louisiana is absolutely not compromising any of its sovereignty, and our acceptance of that money does not in any way compromise our sovereignty when it comes to education, curriculum, and policy in our state. That's one. And there should also be an amendment that allows any and all citizens of the Louisiana, no matter what their income level is, to be able to benefit from it. Those two things should be included in the bill.
And Chris, you know what? Katie is so right. And maybe this is something we should possibly even ask Rep. Geymann to consider bringing, since I believe that resolutions are still able to be filed in the legislature this session. But we should resolve and let the U.S. Congress know that any federal funds are our taxpayer dollars and will be used as such.
Yes. See, the government always believes that it's their money. It shouldn't even be an issue for a parent to get some of their own money back in order to send a kid to a private school. It's their money anyway. It's our money. Yeah. So why should there even be an issue about whether or not the federal government thereby gets some kind of a foothold into the private school education system simply because they're giving us back some of our own money so we can get our kids out of public schools that they created and that they've caused to fail. So It's like, so there really should be no strings attached, but the federal government, it's just how they are. And any opportunity that they have to seize power and to wield influence is that they're going to use it. And so I think those two amendments would be good in the bill, and we're going to move forward on that front. But Danielle, I want to tell you before I go how much I appreciate the time, spending time with you today, especially with Representative Geymann. What a delight he is. And I want to take a minute to thank our listeners to the State of Freedom, our subscribers. We're rapidly expanding and becoming the trusted voice of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana. What a privilege and what an honor to be here. And I simply want to encourage our listeners to continue to subscribe, to share with all your family and friends, and to support the State of Freedom, because it's what sustains us and allows us to keep moving forward and to keep growing.
Yeah. And it allows us to bring fantastic guests, both from the state and get the perspective, the on the ground perspective that you got today from Representative Geymann, as well as national figures who are doing things, and even international figures, which we'll be having on the show soon. So that's a little teaser for you. But all that to say, we're so grateful for you. If you'd like to support us, you can do so at freedomstate.us. That's also where you can drop us a line if you're interested in advertising with the show. And please also visit us at LACAG. We didn't say at the outset of the show, but absolutely sign up for the action alerts. Bookmark the Action Center at lacag.org and be sure to visit it. The mornings are really the best time, I think, to send, because that'll hit them right before committee. And that's usually when our center is most updated. Of course, if you send it and it's not as updated as it could be, I don't think any harm is done in sending an extra email to someone. So all that to say, please do visit the Action Center. Take action on those issues that resonate with you the most, that stir you up the most, and let your legislators know that you are watching what they're doing and that you want your voice to be heard and respected in their votes. Also, please join us at LACAG.org. You can become a member for $22 a month, and or you can just give us a one-time donation to help build our infrastructure and allow us to keep building and growing and expanding. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, Danielle, donations can be sent to P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70896, payable to LACAG. And your donations and your membership and your financial support help us to continue to level the playing field in the legislature. We only have two interests and two loyalties. Well, three: God, the citizens of the state of Louisiana, and the Constitution of the United States. That is it. You heard Brett talk about the big special interests that are down there. Our special interest is the citizens of the state of Louisiana, the ones who get up every day and work hard and pay taxes and simply want a good, healthy state to raise their children in. We represent you and you alone. And speaking for the citizens, Danielle, as you know, yesterday I had a chance to testify on two bills. One terrible bill that would have diminished our Second Amendment gun rights in Louisiana, which we were able to kill in the committee. And the second one was a bill by Representative Mike Facey that was brought because of a lot of pressure and a lot of healthy pressure that we put on him and others to bring legislation. And this legislation will require proof of citizenship when a person shows up to vote. And if they can't provide proof that they're a United States citizen, they're not going to be allowed to vote. Now, think about the culture and the climate that we live in now with illegal immigrants pouring into our country. You don't think that there's going to be a push to try to get them in there to vote, honestly or dishonestly? Absolutely. And that's why this legislation is so very important. I had the privilege of testifying on it yesterday. It got through committee, and we're going to push it hopefully all the way through and get it signed by the governor, requiring proof of citizenship when a person goes to vote. I cannot think of a more important election issue in the state of Louisiana. And I'm bringing this up just so the listeners will know what we're doing at the legislature, that we are fighting for you, for your freedom, and for your liberty. And that is why your donations and your financial support are so important, so we can continue to level the playing field. And if you continue to support us and continue to tell your friends about us and continue to do all you can, including and especially your prayers for us, we will, Danielle, take a grand step each and every day to preserve the great state of freedom in Louisiana.
Amen. Thank you, Chris, and thanks for testifying this week.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.